So let me say up front that Mark Griffin, very conscientious, will deserve better than what he's about to hear in just a moment. We think he's at an airport, not necessarily near you. Let's bring him up and find out. Mark, where are you?
Newark, New Jersey. I hope you can hear me okay.
Oh, we can hear you fine. You're coming in good. Are people looking at you going, what the hell? You're talking to yourself.
Yeah, I'm actually sitting down on the floor out of the way for most people so that I could be on the show, George, but it's packed here. And yes, people are watching, but it's a great place. As you know, airports are a great place to watch people.
So when you get on the flight to get back here, will you be sitting in what I would call the rich Corinthian seat area?
You know, I lost status with Delta, and now I get regular seats. And when you're 6'9", that's not
That's a problem.
comfortable unless you can sit in the exit seat. So I go up there and smile and try to get in an exit seat, but I hadn't been too fortunate, George. So it's going to be a long evening, but that's okay. We got basketball to talk about. What could
We
be
sure
better?
do. Okay, I'm going to toss the hand grenade right off the bat. We have spent a lot of time this week talking about the Alabama situation. You've been in coaching. What would you be doing?
Wow. You know, George, it's interesting. I think that I would probably take a more conservative approach and not play Brandon Miller at this time until all the facts came in. Of course, as you know, there's only so much we know. And they're going to go by their legal counsel, Alabama is, as far as what to do. I don't know how much involvement Coach Nate Oates has in the decision-making process when they are determining the next steps for Brandon and you know what's to occur. It's a major dark cloud over the program, and for me, I just feel I would sit them until I had all the information. Now, maybe Nate Oates has all the information. We don't know that, but until you get complete information, and it doesn't sound like they have complete information, or they said this would have been final. I just don't think you can play him.
Mark, you and I both know they're going to get hounded everywhere they go from here on in, whether it's the SEC tournament here in Nashville or the NCAA tournament where they're likely, first round stuff is going to be in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Can a team sustain on the college level? And that's the key, because I think the pros are better equipped to shut this stuff out, i.e. Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
Can a college team shut this stuff out for 6-8 weeks if they have to?
I think they can. I think that, I mean, you saw against South Carolina, for those who watched the game. I mean, Brandon, the fans are giving him a hard time during the game, making, various comments to him. He lights them up for 41. So I was a little surprised that he played so well during this time period. It shows how focused this young man is on the game of basketball, which is something he can control right now. He can't control what's going on outside of the basketball court until all this is settled. But what he can and what the team can settle is what you're doing when you step on the court, and that's being prepared for your opponent, being prepared for any obstacles that come up outside of X's and O's. So from that standpoint, I give Brandon Miller a lot of credit that he could be so focused and play so well. We'll just have to see how this plays out.
Mark, the part though that got my attention, Miller was unbelievable. How in the world, given all that he was dealing with, that he lit up 41, but the rest of the team looked like they had a dark cloud hanging over them.
True. I mean, but when you got to look at the situation of giving the ball to the hot man, and with Brandon being as hot as he was, they fed him the ball. So if that's the case, if the other players aren't playing as well and he's playing extraordinary, then give Coach Oates credit. He's feeding him the ball, and Brandon obviously wanted the ball. He's putting up a lot of shots. And it's interesting because if you look at that game, George, you're talking the number one team in the SEC against the worst team in the SEC, and it went into overtime. So it just shows you have every team has to be prepared for every game, home or away. You just don't know what can happen.
Mark, let's take a look at where you think the SEC is right now, 1 through 14. I don't think there are a ton of surprises to it, but A&M has, risen to the almost the top of the class. I don't know about you. I'm shocked that they just keep on winning. Billy, what are they, like 13 or 14-2?
Yeah, I think 14 now, 14-2, I think.
Mark,
Just A&M?
Nobody looks at
13-2.
them. Yeah, nobody looks at them and says there's a 14-2.
Oh, you're right. And what's really interesting behind the scenes is, Coach Buzz Williams has got this team really fired up from what didn't happen last season. As you recall, it was noted that this was probably the first team out of the NCAA tournament as far as the brackets. And that just fired up Coach Buzz Williams and the remaining returning players to say, hey, we're going to turn around this season and we're going to show the NCAA and the nation how well we can play. And they are a very surprising team that no one is talking about. And I don't know why. I think the reason it is you've got Wade Taylor, who's their star player, and then you got a bunch of role players. But that's such a great thing when you look at the total team concept, because their big guys aren't big. I mean, Marble 6'9", Williams is Henry Coleman 6'8", Anderson Garcia 6'8". So it's not like they're towering on the inside, but man, they play aggressive and they play together.
Would you ever elevate them to, hey, that they're an Elite Eight team? Because nobody has given them anything. You never hear them talked about. We all act shocked at their record. If it were anybody else, we would have long since said, man, they are kick butt. But you don't hear that about A&M.
No, it's not the glitzy team. It's not the rah-rah coach. I mean, these guys are blue-collared players. If this was Auburn or, other programs, think if this was Auburn with this record and how much we'd hear about them being an Elite Eight contender. And I pick on Auburn because that's the team that I just can't figure out, George. They behoove me every game to know which team is going to show up. But you're right; they're just an under the radar type team, blue collar, playing for each other, and I hope they do well. I really do. I'd like to see Coach Williams put together a great postseason run because he's shown that he's a heck of a coach.
I wonder, Mark, as I think about it, A&M's a football school, period. Does some school come in that needs a coach and lure Buzz Williams out of there?
Well, he's got excuse me, it's really loud in here.
Yeah, I know.
He's got a history of remaining at programs around 4 or 5 years. If you look at his background, and he's around that time period now at A&M. I think an athletic director should be contacting him when open jobs occur, because he does such a great job of turning these programs around. And you're right, it is a basketball school, but as we've seen, George, you can be successful you can be successful at football schools. And I do think he's going to get a lot of calls in the postseason.
I know it's loud in there, and I really appreciate what you're trying to do for us. By the way, let them know that you want to be in first class. Let them know, you're on the Plaster Show. That will either get you first class or into the baggage department with the dogs. I think he got that. Did you hear that?
I did get it. I can hear it, and you're right. Believe me, I'm going to use anything I can that will get me an exit seat. But this is fun. It's good to take a break, talk basketball. Being away from the South this week is a little different because we get into a routine. Those who follow the Southeastern Conference of watching the SEC network. You get into the Northeast, you don't see the SEC network.
No, you don't.
You get ESPN, and you hope that there's a game or two on there. But I'm really excited for this weekend, and knowing that it's coming to the point where people are really gearing up for the SEC tournament in Nashville. And once again, not to just jump on Texas A&M too much, but knowing that this late in the season never would have saw them to be the number 2 seed in the SEC right now, and they have an outside a chance, George, to still win the SEC regular season championship because they are 13-2. Alabama's 14-1. So there's a few games here they still have a shot.
Okay, let's go to your guys. Speaking of teams I can't figure out, is it more injury related or more they struggle in the half court and this is just who they are?
Well, I think the easy answer is to say it's the injury side, but George, I'm not buying into that. Now, I obviously the Tennessee squad misses the leadership of Josiah James and the athleticism of Julian Phillips. But that's why you have 14 players on your team. You have depth. You have the next man up mentality. I think it's more of a season-long drought in the offensive effectiveness of putting the ball in the basket consistently and not having enough people step up when you have guys that aren't faring as well, because the shooting has been dismal. As we mentioned last week, there's no player on Tennessee that's averaging over 40% from the field as a guard, and we're talking 5 guards, and you just don't see that for teams that are ranked as high as Tennessee is. You just don't see that, George. And I thought they would correct it. Have they? No, they haven't. Can they still? Yes, but it's now the barometer's kind of going back and forth. Like, oh gosh, they could be out of the first round of the SEC tournament. They could be out of the first round of the NCAA tournament. And in the beginning of the season, we didn't feel that way. So it is the pendulum swinging now to go a little bit more doubt than what we've had in the beginning of the season.
Hey, I don't know if I'm reading something into what you said or not, so I'm just going to ask it. Do you think there's a button to push that Rick Barnes has not pushed?
What I think what I will say is, Coach Barnes has had a fantastic career in coaching, obviously, Hall of Fame coach. What I'm saying, I think he's pushing buttons. I just don't think he's pushing buttons. I just don't think he's getting what he's wanting from the people where he's pushing the buttons. And what I mean by that is, where's the leadership? If you look at this Tennessee program, who's the leader? Well, I would personally say it's Josiah James. Now, when he's not playing, it's hard to be a leader. So, you could say, well, that has affected Tennessee's play. But someone else has got to be a leader and step it up. And Coach Barnes, with all his coaching finesse and experience, can't make guys be leaders. And I just think that someone's got to step it up. And you don't coach effort. That's one of the first things you talk about when you're working with kids is, look, we shouldn't have to coach effort. Someone's going to have to step it up and maybe dive on a loose ball that they've not dived on before, get a 50-50 ball that they've not gotten before. But, George, it's the little things that really add up. You look at some of Tennessee's losses, and people are going to look at the last-second shots. Well, that's a byproduct of the other 39 minutes and 58 seconds of maybe not taking advantage of opportunities. So the bottom line, George, is you've got to take advantage of every opportunity you can for the game to swing in your direction. And Tennessee's not done that.
Okay, let me try it this way. In the middle of the SEC campaign, all of a sudden you had that weekend where you had Big 12 versus SEC, and Tennessee trashed a really good Texas team, took them behind the woodshed and said, "We are your daddy." Is it possible that part of this is that when they get to the NCAA tournament, whatever seeding they have, that those teams don't know every last detail that the SEC teams do?
Oh, there's no question, George, that, excuse me for my computer moving up and down. There's no detail. I mean, no debate that the teams you're going to play in the tournament don't have the detail that the SEC teams have throughout the SEC play that's going on now. And could that be an advantage? Sure, but on the flip side, Tennessee doesn't know, and for that matter, the matchups, you have limited information on your opponent. So what you do the best you can as far as your scout, but you take care of business, and taking care of business is taking care of number one, and that's your team and fixing your issues so that you can have better play. So, do matchups matter? They do, but number one, you've got to fix what's going on in the backyard.
You don't sound all that optimistic.
Well, I'm just being a realist. I'm basing my observation, George, on what I've seen here recently. And let's face the facts. When you go through the streak that Tennessee has gone through, it's hard to be too optimistic because of how many games they've lost. Now, on the flip side of that, you hope that it's going to be short term, and that those problems are corrected so that you have better results. Will they? That's the $1 million question. Now, I don't want to sound like someone to be too optimistic about the program when they're losing the games like they are and the ways that they are. I just want to be real and say, hey, there's some things to work out. Let's just be honest here, but they are doable. And sure, it's going to help the program when you get Josiah James back and Phillips, but it's more than that.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay. Hang with us. Tell the lady, on the microphone to chill. Tell her we've got a big time show going on and she's ruining it. We'll come back in a moment. We'll talk a little Vandy. We'll talk a little Kentucky. We'll get into some national hoops as well with Mark Griffin. This is the George Plaster Show. The conscientious Mark Griffin, former University of Tennessee star, joining us from the beautiful Newark Airport. Is it a nice airport? Yeah.
No, not at all.
Kind of a dump.
Yeah, it's kind of a dump.
Did you tell the lady to shut the hell up?
I'm working on it. I sent someone, but I don't know where they must have went for a Coke or something.
They went to the baggage department.
And I apologize if this isn't coming in clear. I'm doing the best I can. I just wanted to be on here live with you.
To be honest, it's come through great. Really has. So what do you make of Vandy? All of a sudden we get excited. We get reason to get excited. They go to LSU.
What happened in Baton Rouge, Mark?
Yeah, they laid an egg.
Oh, Mark, I think you just muted yourself.
There you go. Okay. Well, you guys called it. They laid an egg. And here I'm starting, like a lot of people are getting excited about Vanderbilt, and we're starting to talk positive about the program. And we've always talked about how well Jerry Stackhouse calls plays. And then now the players are getting some identity and really playing together. And then they go down to Baton Rouge and lay an egg. And it's quite unfortunate because, they had that nice winning streak going. And then to lose to a team that's not really good, let's face it, it's a little setback. Now, is it a major setback? No. If they can come back and maybe steal another road victory and protect the house at Memorial.
Yeah, but isn't that having to go to Kentucky in the name of stealing one?
Yeah, and I don't see that happening. I mean,
I
let's
don't
face
either.
it'd be nice, but I'm not betting the house on it. But you're right, they're going to have to steal one. It's not going to be Kentucky, so I don't know the remainder of their schedule, but they need to win the other games outside of Kentucky because they've got a good chance to get a nice little seed. It's interesting when we were starting our show, a month ago or so. We had Vanderbilt, playing the first night of the tournament, and now they're playing for a pretty solid seed in the SEC tournament, which anything can happen. Maybe the Vanderbilt faithful will show up at Bridgestone this season.
Well, only time will tell on that one. Let me
I
go to
doubt it,
Kentucky.
but let's hope.
Right. Let me go to Kentucky for a minute. So everybody's rushing to say they're back and they're good. But Mark, if Castleton had been healthy,
Ooh.
Florida wins that game.
Oh, no doubt. And I mean, I'm shocked, George, that I watched that game, and like many people watching the game, they showed Castle on the sideline, and he's a very enthusiastic young man. And you're right. If he plays, it's a 10-point plus win for Florida. But the fact is, he didn't play. I think that Jason Jatoba, the backup center that's actually went to Hamilton Heights and Chattanooga, did a pretty nice job as he could on Shebway. But Florida's having to change their style of play on a whim because, as you know, everything went through Castleton. He was very effective when the ball touched his hands, and now they're having to go to a perimeter style game. And I still think they're trying to find themselves, and I think they're going to struggle. But it's another team that's frustrating for me to watch is Kentucky because they have all that talent, and you just wonder, George, is it gonna click? Because the season's starting to wind down. We're running out of time to say, hey, when are these guys going to play together? And every night it looks like a different team that shows up. It blows my mind.
The answer can't be that they click when the NBA playoffs start. So, Mark, what does happen up there if, they're either in the 7-10 or the 8-9 right now in the NCAA tournament that they're apparently in right now? But what happens if they go to another tournament and they're one and done?
Kentucky Blue, even more angry than before. And what's really going to be interesting, George, is are they shipped out west? If they're a 7 seed, 8 seed, are they going to be in the South? Because as you know, Kentucky faithful, the blue, the big blue, they travel so well. Are they going to head out west? Is that going to affect this team? I think it does. And that's one of the first things I'm going to be looking for on Selection Sunday, not when they get picked, but where they're placed. And I know we'll talk about that in depth in the future.
Well, do you want me to get cynical, ugly about it?
Let's do it.
Okay. It's always been this way. The committee looks around. Now, they can lie about this and say they don't do this, but they look around and they see what region is struggling in ticket sales. And the minute they do that, they go, Kentucky, because all you got to do is put them in there and it's automatic.
Yeah, no doubt. It's unbelievable. I mean, I'm not a Kentucky fan. I respect the program. But man, I love the tradition, and I love watching the fans at these tournaments, be it SEC tournament. I love it, especially when they lose and the fans are selling their tickets. But I love watching the fans get together because they're wearing the blue and they're, meeting and greeting other fans. It's like they're a big family. It's like they played the game, with Shebway and Toppin and others, but it gives them something to relate to the fans. Not as much as in the past because with the freshmen leaving now, you really don't get to know the student athletes like you did years ago. But nonetheless, it's still their team, and I'm sure they're going to pack Nashville as well.
Is there a button for Calipari to push that elevates them to something we have not seen in 2.5 months?
Well, I think one button he's pushed, and this is a guy I've talked about, is Jacob Toppin.
Mm-hmm.
Since the Tennessee game on January 14th, where he scored 5 points, he's had 11 consecutive double-digit scoring games. I think that's the biggest key for Kentucky's turnaround, because he takes so much pressure off of Sheway. And if you notice, Sheway is a very emotional player. He struggles to keep himself under control. I think he needs to be buying Jacob Toppin dinner every night, because Jacob Toppin has really taken the pressure off of him. And I've seen vast improvement of him. He's probably one of the most improved players I've seen in the SEC this year. And I think he's got a shot to make the pros, George. I haven't seen him on any mock drafts, but he's explosive, and being consistent to score the 12 to 16 points a game is just what Kentucky needs right now.
Okay. You ready to play What's My Line?
Let's do it.
Late tomorrow night, St. Mary's, which rallied from the dead in the first game, goes to Gonzaga. Give me the line.
Oh, I think Gonzaga wins by 10. I don't think it's a close game. You could ask why. I just think because of revenge games, Gonzaga playing at home, I think Coach Few is going to have this team even more focused now, getting towards the tournament time. Gonzaga is not ranked where they want to be ranked, or where they think they should, they're deserved to be ranked. I think they're ranked appropriately, but they do have a lot of 5-star players. I remember I actually rented, like many people did, you went online and did pay-per-view to watch Tennessee play against Gonzaga. And when they were calling out the team, the players, I'm like, oh, 5-star, 5-star, 5-star. So they have the talent. But as you've said, George, are they a fraud? They don't play anybody, but this is such a great rival with St. Mary's. So a lot of us will be tuned in. I know you will, and I know I will.
The line is 3.
10.
I'm with you. Billy, get ready. That one's in there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Letting the cat out of the bag. Indiana at Purdue is this weekend.
The rematch.
It's the rematch.
Yeah.
It's one thing for Indiana to win in Bloomington, but do they have the stuff to go to Purdue and win?
No, I don't think they do. Of course, I'm not perfect on this show, as you know. We don't really talk about it because my record's not great. But things being equal, at least 50%. So I guess that's good, right? But Indiana going to Purdue, I don't think looks good for Indiana. Now, Indiana's playing really well, and that'd be a tough matchup in the tournament. I know we're going to get into that once again down the road, but they've got 2 pros at least on the team. But Purdue at home, I'm just going to go with them. I think Edey has a tremendous game, and I think he gets Indiana's big guys in foul trouble. And if you can get Indiana in foul trouble, I think you got a good shot of winning.
Purdue 7.5. How about that?
I'm hammering Purdue there.
I do think they win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, Mark. I still think of the 1 seeds. They're the one I trust the most.
Okay. Name them.
Name the 1 seeds?
Yeah.
Let's hear your 1 seeds, George.
Purdue will end up being a 1 seed.
Okay.
Bama.
Yeah.
Houston. And then a team to be named.
Team to be named. What about UCLA? You like UCLA or no?
When I watch them, you get glimpses of greatness.
Yeah.
But you do not get 40 minutes of it.
No, I think it's interesting. This is a team that's got so much. Speaking of talent, and I've watched a lot of Pac-12. Of course, there's not many good teams in the Pac-12, but UCLA's got so much talent. But I think Mick Cronin gets in their way. I mean, little Mick, let's call him, because I think he really gets in their way. He pulls his little tactics on the sideline. I'm sure it drives the guys crazy. They don't talk about it, but it does. He's been doing his whole career. I think he gets in the way of the success of UCLA basketball. I really do.
Okay, not a big fan, are we?
We've got a Mick hater on the show.
Wow.
No, not at all.
So-
Even going back to Murray, I don't care.
So Kermit got fired today at Ole Miss. We knew that was coming. And, you know, one of the names that Jeff Goodman put out there was Chris Beard. I just don't think this early that can happen.
No. I think athletic director and leadership at Ole Miss gives this some time. I don't think you make a quick decision. There's no need to make a quick decision. It's not really going to affect recruiting. This is not football where you have to fill voids quickly. You've got plenty of time. Let this play out, see what develops around the country, who's hot, who may be having Ole Miss ties in the past, which, you know, that'll start coming out as well, you know, the connections. But way too early. And Chris Beard, I mean, that's a hot name. But, you know, do they want to go there? To be determined.
Yeah.
And,
Film at 11.
And would Chris Beard rather wait on somebody else as opposed to an Ole Miss? I'm not, you know, trying to hate on Ole Miss. It's a decent job, but I don't know that he'd be, you know, elated about that.
Well, you know what's interesting when you
He was
mentioned
the hot
decent
name.
job. Well, you know what's interesting mentioning when we talk about hot school or great schools to go to. I still go back to Auburn and Coach Pearl. Was that a school that everybody wanted to go to? He turned that program around like he did Tennessee. He helped build that new building. Ole Miss has a fantastic facility. I went to the Ole Miss Tennessee game. We can say that may not be a hot destination, but was Auburn? Why can't Ole Miss be a great destination? I really do think if you get the right people in place, you could turn these programs around. I mean, we talked about Northwestern last week, George, and of course it's taken 10 years, but if it takes several years to turn Ole Miss around, if you get the right people who can come in and recruit, sell the state, if you protect your state, there's enough great players in the state of Mississippi that can turn that program around.
Okay, let's see how we close this. Let me look here. Vandy or Florida?
Positively.
Yeah, positively. Vandy or Florida tomorrow? Game is here.
Where's it played?
Nashville.
Here? Oh,
yeah.
Vanderbilt. I don't even think it's close.
What do you think the line is?
Vandy and 4.
Pick 'em.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
Vegas is not buying Vandy at all.
Not now.
And they weren't in the LSU game either.
No, they really weren't. And for that matter, they didn't buy them against Auburn. They were a 3.5-point dog against the Tigers. So, Mark, when does your plane, in theory, take off?
You know, that's a great question.
You don't have a
I
great
need to
answer?
check. No, I think it's in like 45 minutes. I haven't missed my flight. And if I do, you know what? I don't really worry about it. I'll just jump on the next one.
Really?
Stay home. Stay here. I don't care. I don't get worked up in airports. I just like watching people, staying out of people's way.
Yeah. Well, you do the best you can. There are a bunch of people been watching you going,
I know.
why is he talking to himself?
I know. So loud, too, but that's part of it here in New Jersey.
Hey, thanks as always. You were good to come on here.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Mark.